Hello, all, and welcome to my first podcast. Today, we are actually going to be talking about history specifically. And when you're teaching students about history, how far do you go in telling them the exact truth about what happened during that time frame? And the guidelines on ensuring that the students understand the realities of what that history was without potentially ruining their whole look about those particular holidays. The one that comes in mind in particular is like Columbus Day, right? It's celebrated in elementary school classes. They celebrate Columbus, they celebrate his voyage, but there's a lot of aspects of history that specifically paint him not in the best light. For example, yes, he did come over on his ships, but there were also a couple thousands of slaves on those ships being treated horribly. In addition, he wasn't the first one here, although that's a small detail in retrospect, but he did treat the natives very badly as well, and yet in elementary school classes we celebrate him. So the question comes down, do you continue to celebrate historical figures in such a way, or do you try to implement some type of program that allows the students to understand the circumstances around this historical figure while also preserving their innocence, especially with younger students as well? Slavery is a very difficult topic, although very important to speak about, but you need to understand the boundaries of what an elementary school student should or should not know about that particular history because of the level of maturity and understanding about such types of topics. Another one that kind of comes to mind is pilgrims. Pilgrims are celebrated, specifically around Thanksgiving in this country. And although there was a play on Thanksgiving-ish with the pilgrims, they also did not treat the native people of this country very well. The history around why they left England is always misinterpreted and typically incorrect. They didn't leave England for religious freedom. They left England because it had too much religious freedom. They wanted to have more restrictive guidelines in terms of how you live your life. And that's a very different way of looking at this set of people that started our country, especially when you're using it to compare to, the values and such that we have put into our society and, well, honestly, like the creation of the country in general. So when you're looking at students and you're trying to teach them about history and historical facts, how far do you go? Do you tell them that the pilgrims that they've pretty much worshipped in a way since throughout elementary school is actually a bunch of people that didn't like the fact that there was religious freedom in their country, so that they left it so they could be more restrictive? And let's be honest, they burned their people because they thought they were witches. So do you glorify them? Do you just present the facts and allow the students to, make their own opinions? And then at the same time, at what age range do you start doing that? Especially in elementary school when a younger group is wanting to celebrate a holiday. Do you celebrate the holiday through talking about the pilgrims, even though you know that they're not about togetherness and being equal and all that type of stuff? Or do you attempt to try to do something else? That in itself is a bit of a conundrum, because I remember when I was in school having gotten to actually community college before I found out about pretty extreme historical facts about these characters in history that I was always taught to be, not necessarily wowed by, but definitely impressed by. But then realize very quickly as you're reading through textbooks and personal essay entries and such like that through a history class to find out, no, these people were not actually all that they were portrayed to be. Now, I bring up history specifically, and this type of history as well, because this is going to be what the lesson later on is going to be about. It's going to be a history lesson. And so it begs the question of what age range do you really start delivering these level of facts? And which age range would it be okay to maybe not necessarily obscure them, but hint at the fact that there is a little bit of weirdness going on there. Even some major explorers that I do know is in upper level elementary school, like fourth, fifth grade, where students are exploring research and looking into these explorers. Not all of those explorers were all that great of people, although they did do a decent amount. They did have some pretty negative impacts on the societies that they interacted with. Do you have the students look into that? And if you do, does 4th and 5th grade seem old enough to be able to do that, or does it seem too young? At what level is the innocence sacrificed for education? And at what level is the abstract thought of the idea that not everybody is there to do good things? When should that be introduced? Specifically with historical figures that have taught them to do other things. So I'll leave you with this. When you're thinking about creating a historical lesson, is there anybody in that history that you're about to teach that has a bit of a shaded past, and that these students will eventually find out that they weren't as amazing as they've been led on? And if you have one of those characters, what is the age group of your students? Are they old enough that you could potentially point out some negative aspects about this person? Humanize them a little. Or is it better to just kind of stick with this idea of everything's good because of their children? And like in my circumstance, wait until they're older and in a different class to breach these subjects. I don't know. It's a bit of a debate. And it really depends on your students, and it very much depends on your school district in terms of what they are going to be considered to be okay as well. But that's it for now. Enjoy the rest of this podcast, and do you have a little thought about your next history lesson? Bye!